Hi guys, welcome to Code Explode. Today we're going to be learning about another important concept in functional programming called higher order functions. We're also going to be learning what Lambda functions are and how we can use them to make our code easier to read, and we're going to write our own implementation of the Python map function. Okay, let's get into it. So what is a higher order function? Well, a higher order function is a function that takes another function as its parameter. So it doesn't take the return value from another function, it takes the actual function itself. So for example, we could have a function called so we've got a function called print result, and the argument to this function takes another function. So what we're going to do inside this print result function is actually call the function that was passed to us. We're going to get the result from it, and then we're going to print that result. So let's see how we can call this function. So first I need to create another function which actually returns something to be printed. And then I can call my print result function with this new function called say hello. So importantly, I haven't done this because this would return the return value from say hello. I'm going to do this, which means pass a reference to the actual function itself. So print result is going to get called with a reference to this function. The first thing it's going to do is actually call that function. It's going to store the result here, then it's going to print out the result. So let's see if it works. And there, as you would expect, we get the result, which is hello. So that's a very simple example of how you can pass a function as a reference to another function and make that function a higher order function. But this isn't particularly useful, so let's see a more useful example. So there is a function in Python and in many functional programming languages called map. Now, map essentially goes through an iterable, like a list. It goes through a number of items, and for every item it does something to that item, and then it returns the result. So for example, maybe I have a list 1, 2, 3, 4, and I have a function times 2 that takes something and it returns the thing that's doubled. So how would I use the map function in order to convert my list into another list of items where everything is doubled? So I first call map. The first parameter is going to be the function, so that will be times 2. Again, it's not this, it's this. The second thing will be my list of items. So map will go through every item in the list and call this function and then return the result. So let's print the result so we can actually see what's going on. Now map does actually return something called an iterator, and I don't really want to print that because it's not very useful. So I'm going to actually convert the result of the map into a list. Okay, let's do that. So as we can see, each number in our list has been doubled. It's gone from 1, 2, 3, 4 to 2, 4, 6, 8. So what's actually going on in this map function? Should we try and write our own version of this map function? So the first thing we want to do is create a function called map, or let's call it my map so it doesn't conflict. My map. And the first thing this item takes is a function. And the second thing is an iterable. So how might the map function work? So first we need something to hold our result. So result equals a list. We're then going to go through each item in our iterable. And then for each item, I'm going to add the item, but before I want to add the item, I want to pass the item to the function, like that. So that's really, oh, and also I need to return the result. And there we go, that should be a really simple map function in Python. So let's test it out. So we need a function that does something. And then we need a list of items to actually pass to it. Okay, let's run a function. And we've got none, 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 which is not what we wanted, because we forgot to type return there. Okay, this is spread out 3, 6, 9, 12. So each item has been times by 3. And I hope that you can, as we spoke about earlier, I hope that this is a bit easier to read than doing it the old-fashioned way, where you'd have to basically write this every time you wanted to go through a list. So that's how we can pass functions to other functions and make our code cleaner in the meantime. So now let's have a look at how we can return values from functions and how that can be useful. So if I have a function called maybe logger, and in fact, yeah, and then I have a type and a message. And the logger prints the type and the message, and then we'll call the logger like this. Let's test that out. Oopsie. Ah, sorry, I forgot to put the F in front here. I like to keep my mistakes in these videos, so I think it's helpful to learn from. So there you go, and it says info a test, which is what we expect. But now every time we use this logger, we have to pass in info, info, info every single time, which is a bit tedious. So let's see if we can use higher order functions to make this a bit simpler. So in our logger function, let's convert this to something that says create logger. And it takes a type. Inside create logger, we're going to have another function inside this function called log. And this function is going to take a message. And then it's basically going to do what we did before with the type and the message. And the create logger function is now going to return this new function called log. So now what can we do? We can create a logger like this, create logger, info. And now we can just call the logger and we don't have to pass in our first parameter. There we go. And we see we've got the same result. So I've made this code here simpler by using higher order functions. In this case, it's a function that returns a function. It returns this function here. But it returns a special kind of function because this function here that it returns has this type embedded in it. Now, doing this sort of thing every time, def log, is a bit tedious. So Python gives us a way to create a function in line, i.e. on one line, without having to write this. So this is called a Lambda function. And the format is like this. First I write a normal function times. So this is a normal function, and then a Lambda function would look something like this. So these are basically essentially equivalent, but the only difference is this one I can call, and this one I can't actually call it. I could if I did this, like that, and now I can actually call both of these functions. These are both functionally equivalent, they're exactly the same thing. So why is this Lambda function useful then? Well, if I want to use my map function again, so I'll create a list, and then I want to call my map function. It'll be useful to see the logic that this map function is going to do along with the actual map function itself. So it's annoying if I have to look at the map function and then go somewhere else to see what the map function actually does. So with this, I can put a lambda function in here. And therefore I don't have to write this, because I can put it all in line in this part here. So this is exactly the same as writing, but with this version I can see exactly what the map's going to do on the same line, but in this version I have to then go and find the times 2 function and say, oh, it does this. So it's much easier, it's less code, and it just keeps your code neater. So let's run this and just check that everything's working. There we go, we've got 2 equivalent lists, as we would expect. So that's lambda functions, higher order functions. We've seen how you can pass a function to a function, how you can return a function from a function, and also how you can create a function in line. So this is all incredibly useful for functional programming, as we will see later. So that's my lesson for today. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I really hope to see you very soon. All right.